please confirm the roll.
All council members are present, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. We will start this meeting with the PJO Northwest Development Agreement for Mountain View Townhomes. This topic is planned for 30 minutes. Mr. Henderson, would you like to take the lead?
Great. Thank you, Mayor and council members. It's good to be here tonight. Good to see you all. I'll begin the slideshow here in just 1 minute. Great. There you go. I'm also joined tonight by Jamie Burrell, a senior planner within Community Economic Development, as well as Phil O'Sullivan. He's the applicant for the development agreement. We brought this before the Community Economic Development Committee a couple times with their request to bring it to a full work study for council discussion and consideration. So just to give you kind of an overview of the project, we are talking about a 4.2 acre project along North Bend Way. You can see the properties in question outlined with this red line here. The proposed parcels include on the western edge of the project, which is bordered by the Meadows, and on the eastern edge of the proposed project is bordered by Smitty's Towing and Mount Si Memorial Cemetery. And the property is currently zoned neighborhood mixed use, which really kind of allows for a wide variety of different types of uses on the property. Generally, neighborhood mixed use is for general light industrial uses, including fabrication, light manufacturing. However, it also does include residential. And in this case, residential is permitted on the second story or above in the site. So if you kind of look at again, the sort of the variety of uses that could be done on this type of a property within neighborhood mixed use, it could include transitional permanent supportive housing, bed and breakfast, EV charging stations, garden and lumber sales and storage. Retail is also an allowed use, mini storage, and of course, light industrial manufacturing. So like I said, kind of a wide variety of uses can be used within this zoning. So Phil O'Sullivan, the applicant, has proposed a mixed-use commercial and residential project on the property. He's considering 8,000 square feet of commercial that would border North Bend Way, and then up to 65 townhomes or townhome units with residential units on the ground floor behind the commercial. In addition, Phil provided us with a potentially updated project concept, which would increase the commercial space to a little bit over 9,500 square feet and decrease the number of townhome residential units to 56 in this case. So when we look at the project overall in terms of its benefits, we can sort of measure them out in a number of different ways. The first is fiscal sustainability. So doing an estimate in terms of new property, utility, and sales tax receipts at full build out, meaning both the commercial and the residential is done, we're looking at around 87,000 per year of impact to the city. In addition, from basically impact fees and other construction taxes, we're estimating about $3.1 million in one-time fees. Around $2.5 million would go to the city of North Bend, with around $640,000 going to the school district. In addition, some of the other project benefits include tax increment financing. So this project is located within the proposed tax increment financing zone. As we've talked to council before, the TIF zone is really important for providing capital improvement projects to spur economic development, particularly in the western side of North Bend, as well as supporting affordable housing projects as well. The project will also help with the complete streaks by providing new frontage improvements for walking, biking, and beautification along North Bend Way. We also believe it could be a catalytic development, serving as a catalyst for new development on some of the other properties in North Bend Way. And then finally, it hits a number of council priorities. It supports the North Bend's housing and economic development action plans to bring more middle-income housing to the community that could support local employers, as well as new retail amenities for the public. And so the applicant has requested a development agreement. Basically, the development agreement he is requesting is to provide ground floor residential in the townhome portion of the project. Again, under current zoning, first floor residential is not currently allowed, although second floor and above is allowed. There are a number of performance requirements that are included in the development agreement to make sure the project happens at a good pace and that the applicant meets the milestones for construction. This includes submitting a complete land use application and site plan application within 9 months, and then a building permit within 5 years. The Planning Commission heard the development agreement on February 19th and recommended approval. And staff is asking for council's consideration to put this on the May 20th, 2025 council agenda. And with that, happy to entertain any questions you have. If you have any questions for the applicant, Phil O'Sullivan, he's here and is happy to answer your questions as well. Thank you.
Heather?
Thank you. Could you describe, and not with dimensions, but with an example of what 9,000 square feet of store frontage looks like?
Yeah, going back to sort of the original proposal that Phil provided, you can see the commercial frontage here, again, along North Bend Way. That's 8,000 square feet. So 9,000, about 9,000 square feet would be slightly bigger than that. One of the things the Planning Commission recommended when we brought this project to them is to have two both ingress and egress points. So those would be positioned at the end of each of the buildings there to provide better circulation and traffic flow.
But could you give an example of what a 9,000 square foot store would look like? Or commercial building?
Yeah, it could be it could be subdivided into smaller sizes. One of the things in talking with local businesses here in North Bend, they would prefer sort of between like 1,500 and 2,000 square feet of space for retail. So potentially a 9,000 square foot could be broken up into 3 or 4 different types of small businesses.
So would 9,000 square feet be similar to, say, a Shell station?
It would,
So I can offer.
yeah.
For example, as a building size is 12,000. That building's got a 200-foot frontage. Yeah, the length along the street front would be 200 feet.
What is the square footage of the Phoenix retail footprint?
Oh,
We know that.
I don't know that offhand. That wouldn't be something available.
To give you some sense of.
I was gonna say, I believe the single track bike is 4,000, in or around 4,000.
So talking about complete streets, this townhomes would be sandwiched between Smitty's and then the mobile home park. So there'd just be one middle, nice little portion next to Smitty's.
Yeah, it'd be between the basically the two ends of the property. So Smitty's on one end, and then the other development on the other, the residential development on the west side.
Smitty's is not as deep as this parcel, so this one kind of jogs around, and then is adjacent to the cemetery.
Hmm.
And that's where the park.
These referred to as tots.
Todd's telling me.
Ellen?
You mentioned in here that workforce housing, is this got any affordable housing or is this market rate?
It would be market rate housing, but in talking with Phil about the potential selling prices for the units, he's looking between like $150,000 to like $180,000 per townhome. Is that about right, Phil?
No, that's a little low. What we'd be looking at is prices ranging from 450 up.
Oh, sorry,
to the
450.
800
I'm
mark.
sorry.
That's
yeah.
okay. But what you're getting at is income levels to
Yeah,
afford, I
income
think is
levels,
what
yeah.
you're referring to. So that's where our estimates at as of market rates today.
So how would you compare this to what we're seeing at Tri-Point Homes at the Dahlgren? Those are, we were told be 400. I think they're going for almost $1 million right now. Do you believe you can do it for the majority of them at 450?
There is, that site and our site are really not apples to apples. To Councilmember Cohen's point, this site's location is a factor when considering the end price of these units. The neighboring parcels are what they are. It is a tow yard, it is a cemetery, a quiet neighbor, but a neighbor, and the other neighbor would be a mobile home park. So these are factors that we put into play along with the size and scale of the townhomes that we're building, which are of a different nature. There were lower price points there, but there are also more higher price points over there. We'll also have a mix. The current conceptual site maps that we've shared with you all show units ranging from 1,000 square feet up to 1,800.
So you're saying they'd be closer to the new home ones? I mean, they're still gonna have a beautiful sight of Mount Si from the backside. So,
Without a doubt.
you know,
Oh.
new homes don't point, they're same sizes and those are still above that amount.
Yeah, the market will be the market at the time, but this is our estimate based on the location of the project at the moment.
The other concern I have, staff, is I would love to see a long-term where revenue for it. I understand we're talking about impact fees.
Mhm.
Those are one-time development fees, but as we know, the cost of residential is much more expensive and cost of long-term. What revenue offset we get for taking away commercial property area for a smaller piece of commercial? When we designed that up front and having commercial on top was designed to make sure we benefited from the whole value. My concern is we're taking a look at a smaller piece of property and all those houses are going to end up net costing the city more at a time that we're concerned about revenue.
Carl?
James, so if I'm reading the DA correctly, there is no performance clause with regards to the commercial development. In other words, there's no requirement to lease those out, right? Like if theoretically the developer could have it entitled, condominiumize it and flip out of it, and it would be vacant. Right? We're not requiring the developer to lease it out in the DAs. I just want to be clear, right?
Correct.
Brendan?
Thank you, Your Honor. One of my concerns is pulling the lens up a bit is what we've seen are developer agreements and so forth coming to us. In fact, we even were entertaining some vacancy, getting rid of some vacant property this afternoon at TPW. When we start doing these one-off assessments, I become troubled that we're not looking at the holistic impact of the city of North Bend. At the close of last year, we passed our land use elements, and there were some zoning changes and so forth. And for me, I would really like us, and I know I harp on this every year, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that wants this, is some sort of visioning exercise where we as a council actually sit down and we look at what our long-term vision is 3 years, 5 years, and beyond for our community. Every time we have a myopic assessment like this, we end up with a hodgepodge community. I've seen it before. I've lived in communities like that. And so that's one of my main concerns is that here is yet another example of a developer agreement coming through. And sure, maybe it sounds fine and dandy just on the piece of paper on the little lot that we're considering, but I believe we need to think a little bit more holistically about our community and what it is that we're going to do. Because once it's built, right? There's no going back. And I understand the penciling out from the developer, and I understand the staff's interest in this particular project. But the other thing that we have to keep in mind is, through our election year, what I heard door to door, every conversation I had is more commercial, not more residential. Yet here we are presented with an opportunity to increase residential at a sacrifice of commercial, because theoretically, the commercial floor plan may not work according to the design of this particular zoning. So I would like us to take a step back and really come together and talk about what is it that we want to see? Where are we coming at with our complete streets? There's a lot of visioning things that we are just kind of like letting it go by the wayside. Now, some of that's for good reason. We have big items like tonight's police contract. There are some big heavy issues we're dealing with. But ultimately, I get concerned, and I'm expressing my concern to you all that doing these one-off developer agreements, I don't think that's the right way to manage the growth and the aesthetics of our community.
Councilmember Jocelyn and Councilmember Torgerson, I want to make sure you guys have a chance to speak. So if you want to talk, you can raise your hand. I'm watching, or else Go ahead.
Hello, I presume I can be heard. Um, Good evening, everybody. Right, I agree with my fellow council members at the same time. These are trying times. The fact that there's someone willing to come forward and invest in our community in a way that will in fact provide, I believe, economic return to the city is of value. Later tonight, we're discussing police services. Regardless of the provider we go with, we're looking at a huge increase in expense to the city. And we need ways to pay for it. It's possible, yes, this could be leveraged for greater commercial development. I'm not sure what that would look like. But as we, land ownership is 90% of the engagement. Private developers do what private developers do. We can look out there at exit 31 and there sits a vacant hotel site. We're all waiting for the phone to ring to say, oh yes, they're going to proceed and go forward with that. Certainly we don't want to end up, as Councilmember Tremolata pointed out, there aren't performance metrics per se for the commercial development. That is a concern. I would prefer that there were. At the same time, it's beyond my knowledge how it is that you have people who step forward with the capital and interest and willingness. The impact fees alone are coming out of someone's pocket to the benefit of the city, at least in the near term. And there are long-term benefits as well, I think, that would be realized. So I want to make sure we're not, in a sense, looking a gift horse in the mouth here. And it is our job to strike a balance. I'm sympathetic to Councilmember Elwood's concern about long-term visioning. And similarly, the piecemeal piece of how this comes together. I've lived with a piece of a sidewalk here that ends there and then picks up down the street, and it's annoying. At the same time, it's the path this city has chosen in order to promote moving forward towards developing livable communities that support our quality of life. And I think this comes down on the positive side of that ledger. Thank you.
Councilmember Torgerson?
Yes, thank you. This piece of property is zoned to have both commercial and housing on it. And what the DA is saying is just to kind of change it a little bit in the way it looks. The commercial is going to be on the frontage of the road, and with our design specs, it's going to most likely be very attractive because that's what we require. And we also want to encourage people to invest in our community, just like Councilmember Jocelyn just mentioned. The more properties we have, if they're rented out, then rents will come down. And our community has also been requesting if we could figure out how to get rents to come down and make it more economical here. I think that we should go ahead and do this DA. I think that we should encourage people who are willing to spend money in our community to spend money in our community. And I don't think it's that much of a difference from what the zoning is already showing. And that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to rebut that. I understand that we believe that this is going to bring money and net positive. What we're doing is actually doubling and tripling what you would be able to put on an up top of a commercial set with no commercial. The other thing I understand is we're about ready to take a look at the way we charge for impact fees for multifamily homes, which means that net dollar to us in impact fees, and I want to stress that's one-time fees. If you take a look at the cost of an average house, they cost you more than you get back in any impact fee long term. And if you're going to increase it, then understand if the administration can pencil us out and show us long term, this is going to be a net, revenue producer for this community, I would be all in agreement. But my gut feel tells me this would not be a net revenue and would not give us more. We all take a look at, commercial sites that are sitting here empty. We have a warehouse right now, a commercial site that sits empty. So at the end of the day, you're going to be putting more homes out, which are more cost, and based on what our communities asked for is not continuing to add additional residential. I would, if, again, like I said, if it pencils out and you can show me long-term, it's a net revenue to this and would help us pay for his police contract or any public safety, I'd be the first one to stand behind it, but I don't see it at this point.
Yeah, I guess just to give staff some direct feedback where I'm at, because I've seen this now, I think 3 times through CED. I still struggle with the plan. I can appreciate the effort. I still think there's probably a way to have some commercial deeper back, maybe a plaza level kind of retail. But with that said, yeah, I'm not gonna create the development for the developer. They're gonna build what they wish. My feedback to James would be, for me to give up that amount of commercial, I would really like to see some commitment to the commercial being delivered, and not only delivered, but maybe some actual lease language in there or something to the effect of a concession in the event it doesn't occur. Because I'm appreciating and hearing sort of the deals of the past that didn't come to necessarily to the fruition that we believed prior to my time, and I can totally get that. And I think, frankly, without negotiating with a developer directly, I actually think that's not a bad concession and trade-off, right? We're giving up significant depth to not have to fulfill that. 8,000 feet is a lot for a small town, not a lot in the general scheme of commercial, right? I mean, it might take some effort, got to get the right brokerage team, all those type of things. But I think that would make this a heck of a lot more appealing for me. I agree with Councilmember Jocelyn and Torgerson. I mean, I want to be as welcoming and sort of quote unquote open for business as possible. And I want to encourage that, but I also want to heed the maybe mistakes of the past. And I agree with Councilmember Elwood. I want to make sure we're including a vision that we truly believe in and not necessarily missing the mark that will, once it's built, it's built. So hopefully that's some feedback you can take.
I have a question, and I agree with your point. I guess my concern is we just passed the comprehensive plan last December. And, I wish we had taken this into consideration to maybe zone this differently to accommodate what we're seeing today. But my question is, I guess for James, so the note we got about, that was an update. This site plan reflects actually 9,530 square feet of commercial and 56 units of residential, which is actually a decrease in what was originally proposed to us on the April 1st that was removed from the agenda, right? So was that in it? Why was that? Why was that done?
Yeah, I'll let Phil take that one.
Sure.
I'll take that one. That was kind of we shared that map in advance of this conversation, sort of as a result of the process. Over the last going on 9 months, we've been in front of the CED 3 times. And through that process, we've received feedback and been responsive to it. After the first meeting, gauging the interest, that was a different version of the committee you were on at the time. So as a Councilmember Jocelyn, the feedback was this will be a lift. It's development agreements are work, but it's worth pursuing. At the second CED, we heard loud and clear that commercial on the frontage is a priority. That resulted in a 33% increase in the proposed frontage commercial. This site presents some unique challenges, specifically to the type of development that is described or envisioned in the zoning. As Councilmember Torgerson mentioned, we're not asking for a different use. We're asking for a different integration, right? Rather than going on top, putting residential on top of commercial and scattering that development over a very deep site, which is disadvantageous for retail use. You want to be closer to the frontage. That's what business owners want. That's what drives quality business. And as far as living in a home, you get a lot more benefits when you're autonomous in your home rather than on top of the commercial. So when taking into account the recent comprehensive plan, where the NMU zone changed in name only and increased language around trying to encourage residential development, that's what brought us forward. It's paying attention to what you were asking for. Also paying attention to the fact that middle housing stock is a key part of your overall housing plan and affordable housing plan. This provides, up to 65 units. We decided to share this updated concept with you because of the feedback we'd heard throughout the process, which was more commercial. We're concerned about townhomes, and the feedback from the CED. Those conversations are conversations. They're not always concrete, but we've been trying to show up and process what you're hearing and sharpen our pencils to come back with a project that makes sense. We believe in this town. We believe in the potential of this project, and we see, and believe you do too, a lot of benefits in a development of this nature. It can help check a lot of boxes for your stated goals. But in putting this map forward, we're really responding to the fact that we went back to CED after a planning commission recommendation for approval. And when we walked in there, we felt like, hey, it kind of feels like green lights. We've been through this process. We've incorporated feedback. The planning commission has now approved it. Staff is recommending approval. And the CED feedback was still what it was. And the recommendation was to come forward to a council meeting for conversation. Upon being removed from that agenda, we wanted to take a moment and say, we hear you. This is as far as we can go. That's it. 95 is the number on retail. 56 is the number on residential. We sharpened our pencils to get there, to put that line out there so we know. We don't believe if we built this project as the zoning describes it, that you're going to get a product that is going to meet the aesthetics of North Bend, be immediately applicable to the design standards, nor that will attract the type of businesses that will really thrive in that type of spot. There's a lot of commercial here. 8,000 is, as Councilmember Tremolata said, is a lot for a small town. This small town has a lot of retail. It exceeds the national average by almost double before we get into the outlet mall. So it's a significant lift, and the residential does subsidize and make that commercial usage up front possible. So that's the thought process. And given, as Councilmember Tremolata said, we're not negotiating directly. We're doing that through staff and taking your feedback and earnestly trying to do that. We've been receptive and we continue to be. Also, that's where it stops for us. That's kind of our point. So that was what's behind that. I know that was a surprise email on a Friday before a holiday weekend, but there you go.
I think Councilmember Torgerson had something, and then Brandon.
Yes, thank you. In talking about the funds, I believe we have TIFT in this particular property, which will be an extra amount of money that normal properties around North Bend have not been able to provide for us. I don't know if James can provide kind of an estimate on how that would work in giving more funds to the city of North Bend, or can you comment on that, James?
Yeah, through the tax increment finance process, which Councilmember Torgerson is talking about, basically you set a baseline valuation. So say it's $100 for a piece of property. So any new development on that basically captures that increment. So if it goes from $100 to $200, we can capture that $100 and then potentially bond against that for infrastructure projects that would further economic development. So in the case of the proposed TIF area for North Bend, a lot of those funds would go to the West North Bend area, where there's some pretty sizable infrastructure projects out there to support larger scale development for the city.
Thank you. Thank you for your history, and I will commend you because yes, you've gone through quite a bit of process, and that's what we have, and these are important decisions that we have to make. So I appreciate that. I appreciate listening to the concession. It sounds like you were trying to make, penciling it out as far as you can go. So thank you for that. Just one quick question about prices of housing. So are houses more or less affordable if they're on top of, say, the retail environment that would be there?
It depends on the housing typology we're talking about. If and whether or not a developer would be building condominiums or apartments. Apartments are obviously rental, and condos, condo pricings vary. For our development, we're proposing townhomes. That's where we're at. That's the middle housing unit that we're looking at.
Yeah, but what I mean though is that if the residential zoning stayed in and the rest of the buildings back there, however that groundwork or however that framework works, were businesses, and then you have residential on top, my expectation is that the cost for those homes that would be on top of the businesses would be much more affordable and attainable than if they were standalone units. Is that correct?
I think that's reasonable to assume, yes.
Okay. And then this next comment is not directed at you at all in a negative way, just sharing a little experience, which is when there was an individual here who came before us once, and this has happened many times, wanted to put in a cannabis store. So we wrestled over this for a couple of years. I don't know how many CED meetings this individual came to. It's quite a bit. And then we finally conceded and said, okay, we picked this spot over here. That night, he put, using your words, flipping it, put that property up on sale for $1 million because we had agreed to allow that use. So that's a situation where we as council members have real living experience within, at least within my couple 10 years here, of this type of engagement. So I have to be very methodical and considerate. So I just wanted to put that context out there so it doesn't look like I'm coming at you as an individual, because that's not the case.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
Was there a question in there, or are you just sharing that experience?
That was just sharing.
Yeah, understood. We've been here for 9 months in this process with you all earnestly. We're the developers. The next step after approving this DA is we close on the land. We're then further entrenched in this, and then we move forward with the master site plan. That's a 9 to 12 month calendar timeline, and move forward with the next steps. So there's no for sale sign the night after an approval.
Yeah, one comment I'd make for us all to keep in mind, there's a difference between general fund and infrastructure funding. And what we keep looking for right now is funds that go into the general fund. This is not going to be a net positive for the general fund. And that's really where my concern is. And at the end of the day, it's not going to be affordable housing. And that's one of the things that we're looking to put in this community. It will hit the middle. Okay. But is that what we're looking for in that area? And there are other areas that we have zoning for. Would they be better used?
No. It's okay.
Just for the sake of the rest of the group, because I think you might have mentioned this in one of the first CED committees. Can you run through one or two examples on other markets where you've done this similar mixed use?
This particular mixed use, I've got both types of uses, but not one in one spot to cite for you specifically. I have residential and retail holds. I'm currently in the final stages of approval for a 10-acre center site, which includes major grocery, big box stores, fast food pads, that type of thing. We're wrapping up entitlements in one of my endeavors for around 200 single-family residents in subdivisions, which will then move forward. In that case, we'll be working a joint venture with a partner builder. Last year, we finished a project in a similar nature where my company served as the financer for the build of those homes. The other project we have currently going is about a 12 unit townhome project we're broken.
Would you have a partner builder for this, for the actual townhomes?
The next steps in this, it's possible, but the plan as it stands now, there are a lot of steps ahead, and this is the first one. And it's there's no judgment in this. The process is the process, but we've been able to hang with it. We are in feasibility and under contract to purchase this property, and obtaining this DA is one of the conditions that we're looking for before we move forward. We have time to hang with this. We don't have endless time, and 9 months has been quite a bit. So the exact next steps, they'll come to fruition more clearly once we know that we can integrate this site in a mixed use fashion. Instead of going up, down, go front, back.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to item number 3. We'll now move to the presentation for police services. So this presentation is planned for 60 minutes, so the council can seek clarification on the 2 proposals and share information amongst each other in a public format. We are not here to make a final decision tonight, but Mr. Shaw, would you care to take the lead?
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Martin Shaw, Finance Director. I'm going to share my screen here. Great. So there are 3 handouts at your desk. I'd like to just spend maybe 10 minutes, just go through the changes or the highlights of each of the 3 handouts, and then I'll stop to take questions and turn it over to you all. So the first document is about a 7-page document. This is an updated scoring presentation. There is a transmittal cover that goes along with this. I'd like to just walk through the changes with you. So as you recall, this presentation was provided to you last week. The first change is on slide 5, Council. I'll scroll down to that. One of the questions that we received was, can you share the details of the scoring by component? So as you recall, in the RFP, there were 2 parts to the RFP. One was a presentation, which was worth 50 points, and there was the written proposal portion, which is worth 100 points. We have the maximum points shown for each of the sub-elements within those 2 groupings, and the aggregate scoring for the City of Snoqualmie, as well as the King County Sheriff's Office. And as you can see, from the evaluators, we scored the county higher for the presentation, but we scored the city higher for the written proposal, for an overall score of 121.25 for the City of Snoqualmie and 117.25 for King County. The next change that we made is on slide 7. There are 2 changes here. The first one is up on top, the 3.98 million. As you recall, last week when I presented this, we had excluded the cost of dispatch. Following last week's presentation, it was the city clarified for us that the figure, the proposed amount that the city is proposing for the city includes the cost of dispatch, and that those costs are assessed by the City of Issaquah that operates the call center, and that those costs are then assessed to the City of Snoqualmie, and then Snoqualmie then in turn allocates that cost between Snoqualmie and North Bend. The other clarification is in the inset illustration. In the middle box there, Council, as you can see, and I'll blow this up a bit so that you can see this. In the middle box there, the statement there reads 2 North Bend officers, excuse me, 2 North Bend officers and a shared sergeant around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We followed up with the city on this, and we clarified with the inset text box there that the 24/7 with 2 officers would be achievable when the department is fully staffed. The next clarification is on slide, it's on slide 8. Here, again, to provide an apples to apples comparison, the $4.1 million figure on the top. Last week, I had adjusted that figure so that it excludes dispatch. Again, that was my failure of understanding the incorporation of the cost of dispatch for Snoqualmie. So what I did here was adjust the reference for the cost to include dispatch. The one-time cost of 1.22 million is also updated to show that that cost can be amortized up to 5 years. On slide 9, I've made a couple of changes here, Council. So with the inclusion of dispatch as well as specialty units for King County, what we want to try to do here is to clarify for you what is the cost per officer for King County, including the specialty units, and then what is the cost per officer for King County with specialty units excluded. The reason for that differential is specialty units is a service that's received by the city of Snoqualmie, but it's received under mutual aid. So because that mutual aid is provided either under contract or under a service agreement, we weren't able to discern what the portion of the city's cost would be for specialty units. And therefore, what we did was we adjusted the King County reference to include or exclude specialty units in an attempt to have a comparison against the city of Snoqualmie figure. And then the last comparison, Council, is on slide 10. There were no changes to the technical information here. What we did here was clarified the assumptions and what information is included as part of the overhead costs. And that's outlined in the text boxes below each of the graphics here on slide 10. No, please.
You mentioned the mutual aid could cost versus one versus the other. During the presentation, it was made clear that if Snoqualmie doesn't have like for like services, we could then be charged for those additional those services if King County had to provide that. Is that not true?
That's right. In the Q&A, and I'll go over this in a second, for specialty units, this would be SWAT, major accident response, a major crime scene investigation. A city can receive those services through mutual aid, but whether it's charged for those services depends upon whether there is a interlocal agreement or a memorandum of understanding that exists between the city and the agency that provides that specialty service. Any other questions? The second hand I'd like to review with you is a Q&A document. This is a fairly sizable document. It's about almost 80 pages. For Councilman.
Councilmember Jocelyn has a question. Go ahead, Mark. You need to unmute.
Of course, it's been a little while. I'm out of practice. Martin, if you're willing, could you go back to the slide with the proposed services, the blue boxes? And sometimes it is a bit delayed on my end here. There we go. So I see the star and the qualification about when fully staffed. It's my firm belief, and you could confirm this, and I just wanted to put this forward, that nowhere in the written proposal or the proposed language of the contract or the ILA does it refer to a proposed coverage of 2 officers 24/7. In Snoqualmie's own press release following earlier meetings with us, their statement is the proposal maintains North Bend's current level of service, which is 1.5 officers. So I don't see anywhere. I mean, to me, this is almost not germane. There is no commitment, no promise, no indication contractually that binds them to this level of service that's committed. In my mind, this level of service, the minimum sworn officer level, is what's addressed and contained in the contract that they submitted in writing as part of their proposal. Is that correct?
Councilman Jocelyn, that's correct. In the draft contract that's attached to the proposal, the draft contract speaks to the minimum sworn officer level, but I wasn't able to find reference to a proposed coverage of as shown on this slide here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for keying in on that. Quick question. Do we know, and I apologize because I should probably know the answer to this, but there's been so much roundabout with this. How long has the Snoqualmie Police Department been fully staffed in the next year? Have they been fully staffed every year, or is every year that we've been with them, or even just in recent terms?
There was a question, Councilman, question number 11. On page 5 of the Q&A handout, we did ask that over the past 5 years, how many of those months was the Snoqualmie Police Department fully staffed? And the answer was that over that 60-month period, it was 1 month out of those 60 months.
That was fully staffed.
Was fully staffed.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, because I think you and I discussed this, but the two proposals, just to be clear, the proposal from Snoqualmie is a 12-hour shift, and the King County proposal are 10-hour overlapping shifts for patrol. Excuse me.
Yes, that's right. And for the county's patrolling model, that's detailed in on page 7 on question number, as part of question number 1 of the Q&A handout.
Oh, and I see. There we go.
Any other questions? On the Q&A handout, Council, again, this is the larger handout. And for Councilman Jocelyn's and Councilwoman Torgerson's benefit, a copy of these handouts are available in your inboxes here at City Hall. I won't go over each of the answers in detail here, Council, but I'll just scroll through this so that you have a sense of the questions that are included in this handout. Starting with Snoqualmie on page 1, the first question is in regards to the weighted calls for service and the definition of that. In our statement here, or in a question, I guess, and in the proposal, there was reference to a 2-year rolling average in the city's response. I just want to note that they clarified that it will be based on a 3-year rolling average. Question number 2, in terms of body-worn cameras, that isn't a amenity that's currently included as part of the Snoqualmie Police Department, but we did ask what is the estimated cost of that if this investment were made, and the city answered and estimated that as of today anyway, it's worth about $304,000 investment over a 5-year period. Question number 3, proposed coverage. We discussed this one. I won't go over the answers here. Question number 4, there was a statement made that the city of North Bend was not paying for certain past costs. Could you please clarify that? This is a fairly lengthy answer, but and I'll let you go through this on your own. But the city of Snoqualmie laid out their arguments as to why that's the case. Question 5, school resource officer, how is that position split and funded? The answers provided there that the Snoqualmie Valley School District reimburses the city of Snoqualmie for about 40% of the fully loaded cost of that officer. Question 6, how's the cost of the mental health officer funded between Snoqualmie and North Bend? This is, as you can see in terms of the answer is funded, or the positions, the cost is split 50-50. And that that the proposed ILA would split the cost of this position based upon the weighted calls for service, which would equate to about 44% to North Bend. There was a request for detailed supporting information that is included in the packet, and that's included starting on page 13 of this handout. Question number 8, funding assumptions for the school resource officer and how much is funded by the Snoqualmie Valley School District, Snoqualmie and North Bend. Question number 9, the 12-hour shift question. And the question here was, will there be a potential gap in coverage with the handoff of shifts between one shift to the next? And the answer here is no. Question number 10, status of filling vacancies for the support officer as well as the mental health officer. And then question number 11, which I spoke to just a few minutes ago regarding full staffing over the past 5 years. So I'm gonna pause there just for a second and I'll see if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I guess it was referenced twice in here, the SRO. So is the answer that we're paying 44% of the remaining 60% that's not funded through the MOU?
Yes.
So
this would be question number 8 is what I'm presuming that you're referring to, Councilman.
right.
Right.
And so you're saying the estimated net cost of the city of North Bend would be 49,867 for 2025. Is that right?
That's right. Those are their calculations, but that's correct.
But it's the pass-through cost in the proposal that was presented is 99,737. Or excuse me, that's the support officer. 126,467 in the proposal. So why is your number different than that?
I'd have to research that, Councilman.
It's
I
under
don't have
police
an answer
service
to that.
fee in the proposal that we saw on the presentation.
Is it on the PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's this slide.
I don't want to put
Because my understanding is that it's the fully loaded cost is in here
Mhm.
at 284,688, and 40% of that is the 126. So it seems like we're paying 40% of the fully loaded cost, and the school district's paying the other half.
Yep, I can I'll research that and I'll clarify, Councilman.
Okay.
I don't mean to call Snoqualmie staff and put them on the spot, but we do have representatives from the city, and if you have an answer to that.
Councilmember Torgerson, you had a question?
Yeah, I don't see my questions that I had submitted on this list that was, I guess, sent over to Snoqualmie. That's disconcerting to me because I spent a lot of hours preparing my questions. And, one of my questions did have to do with the SRO. It was a very detailed question. And the long and the short of it, we just talked about it just now. I mean, Errol is exactly right. And that these numbers aren't matching up. The other issue is, why would we be paying for SRO anyways? I don't think even the city of Snoqualmie should be paying for it. All of us are already paying for it through our property taxes. We pay like 60% of our property taxes go to the schools and the state. And it doesn't make sense to me that we would be spending any of that money. That now the schools are required to come up with some sort of school resource officer. It doesn't have to be a police officer. It could be a security agency. But we only have 2 schools in our city in the Snoqualmie Valley School District, and they're elementary schools. So that's one reason why I don't think we should be paying for that. And secondly, I don't even think the city of Snoqualmie should be paying either. So that was pretty much part of my question about that. And then my question about the mental health professional, that's not on here either. The numbers aren't matching with that as well. And, you know, I had a long list of questions. For example, with the mental health professional, we received a grant of $150,000 to pilot a mental health professional program. The following year, North Bend was asked to pay 50% of that. We made a new ILA to do that. And now that we don't have a mental health professional employed, they did list the job, and the job was between $68,000 and $9,200 a month, which let's assume that they hire someone for the highest salary range. That'd be almost 111,000 for the year. On top of that, if you add on the benefits, you're probably close to 25, maybe 130,000 a year. All of that is well under the $150,000 when we had that grant. But on this proposal that they provided, it lists that the mental health professional, the fully loaded, one full-time employee is $243,743. And then we're going to pay 108. But the current one that we had, they were only getting paid like 102,000 a year. So these numbers just aren't making sense to me. And that was the question I had, and I had hoped that would be answered. What other questions did I have? So anyways, I guess I'm kind of disappointed because I put a lot of work into my questions. I did a lot of research, and I don't see them being answered here. And so that's all I have to say for right now.
Not for this. Well, unless you're done with your presentation.
Well, I was just going to scroll through the county's Q&A section, if the council wishes. Okay, so continuing on, this is on page 6. The first question for the county, additional explanation of the different shifts. Again, I won't go into detail here, but the county did provide an explanation of the 4 shifts, as well as a table showing the level of coverage under each of those shifts. Question number 2, the question here was clarify if the response times includes dispatch time, and if it does not, please revise and break out dispatch time and as well as travel time. And the county went ahead and did that, and the technical tables are shown here starting on page 8. For Kenmore, and then as an example, and then for the city of Woodinville on page 9. Question number 3, we asked for clarification in terms of what's included in terms of the body worn camera cost. And the explanation here is provided in terms of what's included in terms of software, training, technical support, and public records. Question 4, I think I addressed this earlier. The $1.2 million one-time cost, is that amortizable, excuse me, can't say that word, over a longer period of time, beyond 3 years? And the answer is yes, over 5 years. Question number 5, mutual aid. can explain this concept further and the costs associated with that. Again, I won't go into this in detail, but a county did provide an explanation as to how these services are provided and the governing state laws around that. Yes, Councilman.
We asked the sheriff to discuss mutual aid, what portion of our services would be entertained or delivered through King County commercial aid, through mutual aid.
I'm sorry, say that. Ask that one more
Okay, we
time.
asked the county about costs associated with mutual aid.
Yes.
What portion of the sheriff's contract would require mutual aid is what I'm asking.
The mutual aid cost that's included in our cost proposal is an allocable. I'm not sure if this answers your question, Councilman. Is an allocated share of the cost of the mutual aid, or not the mutual aid, but of the specialty units. In terms of the mutual aid, for example, the sheriff's office is drawing upon mutual aid from another agency as part of its services. What cost is included as part of that? Is that your question?
Well, I'm assuming that the specialty costs are built in the costs of King County's costs. Is that not correct?
My assumption is it was included.
Therefore, what items would we be concerned with the costs from King County on mutual aid? Just trying to understand why it would fall into the King County question. Just curious.
So the no, this question isn't specific to the county's proposal per se. It's a question more around how is mutual aid provided as an agency for King County that does provide mutual aid to other agencies.
Thank you for that clarification. That was what I was looking for. Thank you.
Follow up on that, because to me, now hearing the dialogue, this also seems like a question that would have been good for Snoqualmie. I think we did ask about mutual aid at one of our meetings. And my understanding is that because we don't have like for like services with our current police department with other agencies, that we could stand to be billed or denied that mutual aid service in the event that we needed it. Whereas with King County, because they have all these great services that they've listed out, the risk of being denied is not great, but also having additional costs levied to us would not happen because it's a mutual aid paradigm. Is that a correct assessment?
Thank you. I believe that's accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Two more questions, Council. Excuse me, 4 more questions. Mental health professional, how is that funded? The county provided information here in terms of the funding, and it's I think the last sentence in this section is relevant, that contract agency partners are not charged for the additional fee. Fire investigations, what's included in that? Yes.
And I know I submitted this kind of late in the game, so I don't think you've received a response yet. But my question was, in reading the proposal, understanding that federal aid provides for some of these special services, and watching what the current administration is doing with rescinding funding in certain areas, a community and so forth. Some are DEI, some are health and so forth. Do you anticipate any sort of shortcomings or shortfalls with any of the federal funding with any of the services that you currently provide in such a way that we may have to increase our contractual costs? It's a heavy question.
I'm happy to shout it across the room, but you probably want to. Ron, thank you. Thank you, council member. For the record, Joel Kang, the Community Programs and Services Division Chief for the County Sheriff's Office. We actually have a very articulate answer for you to that question that we were working on that should be submitted either later tonight or tomorrow morning. However, for the time being, the simple answer to you is with the amount of federal funding that we've received through grants in particular, which is pretty minimal in the overall King County Sheriff's Office budget. And those funds are to either start up pilot programs or to get new programs just to the starting point. Specifically regarding the mental health professional program through our co-response unit, that should not impact it as half of our co-response unit is funded through the county's mid tax revenue. And that's what's going to sustain the program. The federal funding actually will be running out in 2026 and 2027 for the two respective DOJ grants that we received. And so we're aware that those positions that are funded through those grants are going to be expiring in the next year or two anyway, as those are term limited positions. And so in future budget years, the request to sustain or grow the program will be drawn through the county's general fund and potentially the county's mid fund as well.
That was very articulate. Thank you.
Right, just a couple of additional questions. Question number 7, fire investigations. This is a opt-in or opt-out service by the county. And if we opt in, that could replace existing fire investigation services provided by Eastside Fire and Rescue. Question 8 is around homelessness, and providing, the question here was providing more information about the county's policy towards homeless encampments. Question number 9, are contract cities charged for felony bookings? The answer is no. And then question number 10, how are misdemeanor jail bookings assessed? And those are assessed under separate interlocal agreements with between the city of North Bend and Issaquah, SCORE, as well as King County. The last handout, council, is a draft agenda bill. And as the chair stated at the outset, no actions being requested for tonight. This is a draft agenda bill for consideration. Essentially, if the city council is ready to take a vote, then we would fill in the blank in terms of the agency that we're awarding this contract to. And there are 3 alternatives here presented for council. One is awarding the services contract to the city of Snoqualmie. Number 2, awarding the services contract to King County, which would in turn authorize, which would require a termination notice with the city of Snoqualmie. And then alternative number 3 would be to negotiate with the city of Snoqualmie and extend the 2025 renew ILA to, as an example, to January 2026. And then for the city council then to use that time in the meantime to continue discussions on policing services and options.
I have a question on this, if I can. On May 6th, would we be able to see a draft contract that would go along with this vote?
The draft contract is attached to the written proposal. So as
For
part
both?
of for both.
Okay, I guess I didn't catch that. Thank you.
Why is alternative 3 included? Because that's not consistent with the RFP that went out.
It's I think that staff put that down as a suggested option for council. And you're right, it wasn't identified as a option in the RFP. But what we try to do is be comprehensive in terms of the alternatives available to council for consideration.
I have a concern with that. We put out an RFP. We had two agencies come to us under that RFP. And that third option to me seems unfair to at least the King County sheriffs who have spent time, money, and exercise to put their best foot forward. I think that's what we were asking for both contractors to do. Thank you.
And staff would be happy to eliminate alternative 3 from the agenda bill if that's what council wishes.
Screen. Councilor Rustic, I think is a.
Yeah, Councilman
Hello?
Johnson. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to first take this opportunity simply to say that early on in this process, there was consideration of standing up our own police department based in large part on the CPSM study and so forth. Right. Standing up our own police department at this point in time is simply too costly and too expensive and hasn't been given essentially further consideration by council. And so I'm stating the obvious, which at this point in time, that does not seem to be anything that this council is considering. I also will point out that the following tonight's meeting, we will be going into executive session, at which point that might be a time at which we could consider continuing this conversation about alternative 3 and how council feels about bringing that forward. It was at my request that Martin put this together to bring it forward in large part such that we could have this type of conversation and sort this out, as at the moment this was not going to go before any of the committees before coming to council. So I'm looking forward to an opportunity to continue this specific conversation about alternative 3. Perhaps later in the evening. We're not going to resolve that at this point in time. I do appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Mr. Elwood. Oh,
Sorry.
that's fine. Oh, okay. If you have something on this.
Just regarding the statement made, this conversation, can it be discussed in executive session? And I thought this should be an open public on that third option. So just clarifying if that is something that can be discussed in executive session.
The executive session is to review negotiations on the performance of publicly bid contracts pursuant to RCW 4230-110 subsection 1D. Further details about the executive session cannot be discussed in an open public meeting.
I get that, but I'm asking, I guess, I don't know how to ask this, but we cannot vote on this as this is a work study. We can only give our opinions one way or another. And it is my belief that what is on the table of discussion right now should be a public discussion. Is it, should it, or should it not be?
Councilmember, we have not held the executive session. So if you want to express your opinion about the legislation in the agenda bill, you are free to do so.
All right, Councilmember Elwood.
Couple questions and we'll see where the conversation goes. Has the city of Snoqualmie rescinded their cease and desist order against us that was filed?
Councilmember Elwood, to our knowledge, no, we have not received anything from the city of Snoqualmie.
And what's interesting is the night that we had them here, I believe I learned out later that their legal counsel was actually sitting in the back of the room when either I or Councilmember Tremolata asked that question, and it was deflected by simply saying, well, I don't have, Drew unfortunately was answering a legal question. He wasn't capable of doing that. So I just like to point that out. Can we also, I'm also under the understanding that there's been some public records requests coming our way. Is that, can you give me a little history of this?
Regarding Snoqualmie, we have a public records request still in progress, which we are addressing at this time, continuing to address at this time.
And what's the nature of the request?
Generally around police, the topic of police, and we've got the scope narrowed a bit. I can certainly ask our legal counsel, Kendra, to perhaps fills in more in the detail, but I'm working with the city clerk rather closely on it. But we can only expend a certain number of hours each month according to the ordinance for the city of North Bend. So it's a fairly long and drawn out process right now for us.
Can I propose to our council members? I know that many of us have had a variety of discussions with entities trying to do our homework and do our due diligence, including some of the emails that we received from Mayor of Woodinville, for example. I would like it if we could share in this public forum, some of the information that maybe has only been shared with a subset because we're not allowed to in a non-public forum. Is that okay?
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we have time to have our, statements to our conversations too about this contract and what we're discussing.
yeah, absolutely. So I don't think it needs to be a lengthy thing. I just want to share so we all have the same information. So, and, I'll just start with a quick summary of a conversation that I had with the mayor of Sammamish. And one of the key things that she said was hiring of the chief is the most important thing to success. In her opinion, they have had a partnership with King County for many years. And that was her number one thing that she wanted to share. So, anyway, so I think others have some things. Yeah. Go ahead.
Spoke with sitting at Covington, who also holds a contract with the sheriff. To summarize similarly, the most impactful item over their long tenure, and they did look into at one point starting their own force, but they kept the sheriff, was the amount of data and collaboration with forecasting and budgeting as a council member. They thought that was paramount in their ability to plan for the future. No large surprises, certainly increases, no doubt. It's a contract, but the trading of information. I believe they said their CA meets monthly, and their director of finance either every other month or every quarter at least had some information. Seems like very similar to your experience, Alan, with Eastside Fire, having kind of updates on a regular basis and allowing the city to plan for the future. So I know that was presented in the proposal, but real time, that was the feedback from.
Can I clarify that a little? As an ILA, we are a party and partner and do get that information in real time. Our contract cities up till now have been notified on an ongoing basis when something's changed. The change in there right now will be that they'll have advisory seats on that board in order to hear what's going on, understand how we're coming together, the pricing. That also brings some concerns with where we're at right now. We keep talking about this as an ILA, and maybe we set this up as an ILA, but we are not truly under an ILA that I understand through the city of Snoqualmie. What we are being asked, or what we're asking for, is a contract, which is different than an ILA. As a board member or as an ILA member within Eastside Fire Rescue, we do pay shares of the same things as opposed like the administration building. All the administrative officers are paid by the shared partners. Our contracts are not charged for those services. So I want to clarify that because that's been some discussion here. That is why our contracts are charged an administrative fee. They are not paid for every service. They pay for only services that they provide. If we were to choose to get accredited, that would be a charge that the partners would decide to make and not hoist that upon the contracts. So just some clarifications on my concern, because we keep intermixing that. What we originally signed up and what I thought we signed up when we signed up with Snoqualmie was a contract. I think that is where there's some language difference and misunderstanding here is we are a contract. We had a contract and we paid what we were asked to pay in the contract. What we're asking for is an additional contract or extension of that contract based upon what standard contracts should be made.
Susan, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so Because I hadn't received, I thought all of our responses to our questions, we would have received them last Thursday. Typically, that's what happens before a council meeting. Council members receive the information that's going to be held on the following Tuesday, on the Thursday prior. They're printed out and we can read them and all that. And so the information we received, it seemed that King County hadn't answered my question about homelessness issues. So I had reached out to Mayor of Woodinville, Mike Millman, and because they work with King County as their police service. So what he wrote back to me was, as a former fire and EMS leader, I watched in frustration as the homelessness issue exploded in the 1990s, working with our King County sheriffs and East Side Fire to mitigate that issue. We have a large tourist draw as well, and this has been a priority of his. We have a contract with Porchlight in Bellevue, and I brought the Eastside Core Connect program to our sheriffs for utilization. We have been able to provide services for those that want help and alternatives out of Woodinville for those that are resource resistant. They have been very active and successful enforcing trespassing laws. Recently, our King County Sheriff has had a proactive retail theft emphasis that has been very successful. Programs like these are benefit to partnering with a larger organization. And that was the response I got from the mayor of Woodinville.
Councilmember Jocelyn, do you have any questions?
Um, well, I don't have any questions. I'm not sure if it's the appropriate time. I guess I'll share my observations at this point in time as to sort of where I'm at. I think all council, well, first let me say, I want to acknowledge the respondents. I'm not in chambers. I did watch early on. I believe there are members of Snoqualmie City Council, perhaps local police. I heard Chief Kang, or forgive me if the title is wrong, clearly from the King County Sheriff's Office. And I just want to, this has been a heavy lift for everyone. And I want to say thank you for your engagement. At this point, based on what I've learned, the cost differences are de minimis, not determinative as to making a difference, in my opinion. It's going to be a huge lift for this city regardless, and it's frightening from a fiscal perspective. But that's clearly beyond our control and a sign of the times, if you will. The scoring that our staff worked weekends, put in long hours to sort through, it was shared in greater detail. Similarly, is not determinative. We're not held by one or the other. The difference in the scores, again, isn't determinative. Near as I can tell, the level of service that's being offered is the same or very similar. It's there. We're not being promised 2 officers 24/7. That's not in the contractual language. We have no way to hold them to that. What's stated in their own press release and in the written contract provided by Snoqualmie is a level of service of 1.5 officers over a 24-hour period. So that's not determinative. What we're left with is qualitative issues. Differences, body cameras come to mind as an example. We've heard some references to the challenges that we faced in being in conversation with Snoqualmie, and I have concerns about the city of Snoqualmie's, for example, the landing page in the response to North Bend for the provision of police services. The tone and approach strike me not as seeking partnership, but recognizing intangibles. If North Bend is to send a letter of termination, Snoqualmie is going to have a very difficult time meeting the current level of service that they are providing to their own citizens, for example. And I see no acknowledgement of that. My sense of this is, and so the tone and approach striking is not seeking partnership. They continue to rely on an RCW that I think is not germane, seeking true and full value. And starting back in May 13th, there was This was run through the Finance and Administration Committee in Snoqualmie. Near as I can tell, in North Bend, we ran it through the Health and Public Safety Committee primarily. And at that time, the price differential there's an implication that North Bend has not, has actually violated state law. If I read it the way that it's written, and there's a misrepresentation of state law and an effort, I presume, claim a stronger negotiating position. This clearly seems to me to be the perspective guiding Snoqualmie's approach. It's focused to a fault on what they determined to be a 50-50 split in all costs that they determined germane to the provision of police services. The current administration in Snoqualmie brought forward a playbook focused on having North Bend pay exactly half of what they determined it is costing Snoqualmie to run their police department. This is due, I believe, to a misapplication of RCW 4309211 that they continue to cite on their landing page, in their communications. And it's clearly demonstrated in the letter of August 29th, 2024. It stated that Snoqualmie will be sending a bill for just over $4 million. To quote, it states that the city of Snoqualmie proposal increases. It also, to quote it, right, the city of Snoqualmie will begin billing the new amount, $4,048,000, effective January 1st, 2025. This is the letter that North Bend received in August. It says essentially, we'll be sending you a bill. There hadn't been a conversation. We hadn't been in discussion. They sat down, crunched the numbers, and split the cost 50-50. It further states that the city of Snoqualmie proposal increases the 2025 contract price. The current landing page that will increase the landing price to $3.98 million, again, to comply with state law. Case law does not support that assertion, but that assertion on its face to me says North Bend has been, brushing up against violating state law by not paying, quote, their fair share. North Bend paid every nickel, as far as I am aware, of what was due to Snoqualmie under the contract that both parties entered into and have been working under for the provision of police services. So to implicate or suggest, that somehow North Bend is to comply with state law suggests that we haven't been. And I strongly reject that assertion. It's simply wrong, and I take exception to it. So those are my thoughts at the moment as to where we're at in this process.
Ellen?
I'm gonna agree with my fellow council member and my concerns. I do want to make it clear, the service that the officers have provided us in this period of time have been nothing but exceptional. This has nothing to do with the officers, and I need to make that clear. I do believe that the way this has been approached by Snoqualmie has been a big miss by Snoqualmie. And I think as a community, it's a huge loss. I think this could have been handled differently, and I think the Snoqualmie North Bend contract was one that was a positive and could have been moved forward in a much better manner than it has. As we look at these scoring things, I have a few, comments to that. I understand we show a scoring of a little bit more of Snoqualmie, but if I take a look at based on the questions and the comments that we've had for Snoqualmie versus King County, I am pressed to understand how we came up with the numbers on the written proposals. And again, I am pressed to understand how we are being asked to pay partner pricing as opposed to a contract pricing. There are models out there. Eastside Fire and Rescue is an example. You can look at every contract that we have and the way it's done. It was in fact mentioned in the email by the city of Woodinville as to why they came to That was because they pay for their services and the level and the stuff that they need. And they can make decisions on their policing service on the level of service. We have very little input currently into Snoqualmie. We have, if you look at the number of days that they have fulfilled the contract based upon the numbers we've asked, it's not a lot. We have a lot of promises, but not a lot of showing us that that's being done. As we know, there's been a lot of information that we get, and not from Snoqualmie, but from the press, and that's concerning. If we're a contract city, I think it's important for us to know what's going on prior to the press. As council members, we get asked about it. And I think that's something that we need to consider as we're moving forward with this contract. Are we going to get a level of service and get reported and be part of the process to understand those things our citizens would ask? I know we have a lot of citizens that came forward and want us to push this process back and hold off. I think that's a mistake. We have spent over 2 years and a lot of staff resources to make this decision. We have asked the city of Snoqualmie, we've asked King County to come forward with their best contracts. I think it is time for us to come forward on May 6th and make a decision based upon what we feel and what services and how it's worked through the city. I would ask no different from an East Side Fire and Astro contract being renewed to have the same process. So I want to applaud staff and this council for the due diligence that has been done during this process. And I think at this point, we need to make a decision May 6th and move on. Thank you.
Councilmember Torgerson has her hand up.
Thank you. I agree with both of my council members, and exactly what they've said. I too, I mean, I've been spending a lot of hours, like a lot of other my members here of the council, of really putting our heads to this and figuring out what's the best solution, and really asking a lot of thoughtful questions, not of just of Snoqualmie or of King County, but other people in the community, and just trying to gather information, because this is a third of our budget. It's very important decision. And some of my key concerns are the staffing shortages that Snoqualmie currently has. We don't have a police chief, we don't have a mental health professional or a police support officer in place. And these aren't just minor gaps. They represent the leadership, they represent mental health response and operational support. And I think they're essential. And we just, we don't know what's going on there. Budgetary instability. Despite having significant higher property tax revenues than North Bend, Snoqualmie is facing serious budgetary shortfalls. And their proposed fee structure for North Bend appears to be designed not around actual service costs, but to subsidize their internal budget gaps. And I haven't been able to find any data to the contrary. They submitted to us 4 million last year, and they based on population, and then this year they submitted almost 4 million based on service calls versus number of officers. So the numbers just don't seem to match for me. An increase from 1 year to the next 60%, it just, again, doesn't match for me. And then there's the lack of the financial transparency. I keep on talking, I don't know if anybody's listening, but the mental health professional, we got a grant Snoqualmie got a grant a couple of years ago for $150,000. And for them to put on the proposal that the mental health professional is going to be for full time is $243,743. The numbers just aren't matching up. If you were to even do, the last mental health professional, it was like 102,000 she was making a year. And then on top of that, it'd probably be like 120 if you were to add the benefits based on what I received from the city of Snoqualmie. So they're asking us to pay way more than our share. I just have a lot more questions still of Snoqualmie than I do of King County. I've asked King County questions, and it seems like those answers have come across. So I'm feeling better on that situation. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you, fellow council members, for your words, points of view, and the extra research that you've all done to really make sure that when we get together as a collective, we're sharing our different points of view. And it's informed and it's thoughtful and it's passionate. So I respect and appreciate all the work that you all have done, as well as staff. I know we spent a lot of hours and time on that, and so have the agencies that have put together these proposals. So I appreciate that. I have a couple kind of tactical questions, I guess. Are we to consider the proposals before us as best and final offers from both agencies? And then this follow-up to that is, will there be further negotiations beyond here, or is there room for that?
Councilmember Elwood, in the context in which you received them, to your first question, yes, unless council would like to deviate from that for any reason, you have that option. I wouldn't suggest anything further, but you asked for these proposals, and that's what we delivered. And council's in your best interest for the community. You certainly can go, make other requests. You can do whatever you like, but this is what you have in front of you. The second part, I'll ask Kendra the city attorney to respond.
Sure. So when council is ready to bring forward an agenda bill, the motion in front of council will be to authorize the mayor to negotiate an agreement with that police services provider. So the contracts were provided by King County and Snoqualmie in your written proposals that you received. For me, it was on PDF page 21, just for ease of reference. I don't know if those are final complete terms or if they are subject to negotiation. One would hope most contracts, including interlocal agreements, are going to be subject to negotiation for those final terms. I certainly have some suggestions, as is probably no surprise to anyone. So your agenda bill would be that motion authorizing the mayor to begin those negotiations. Then staff would take on that work and contact that police services provider that you have chosen based on their proposal that they've submitted to the council through this process. And then at the end, if I might, the final contract for police services would come back to council for final approval and execution at that time.
Cool. And then just another follow-up there. So through this process, one of the things that continually pops up, especially why I agree with the distinction between ILA and a contractual term. I don't see this as an ILA, even though it's across the banner of the agreement, but such as may. But one of the things that keeps popping up, specifically with Snoqualmie, and I'll address King County in a second, is this idea of we are not allowed to have any hiring say or firing say in the chief, right? We've had, I think we've been in this agreement 8 or 10 years. We've had cycled through 3 chiefs, which I think is not good. There's things going on that are interesting with the chief piece. So it goes back to this question of liability. You can't have a say in your chief because of liability. So as I try to understand, what does liability mean? What's the extent of liability? I would like some clarification around my understanding of it, which is essentially, if a police department, whichever one, is involved in something that is police related, like a shooting or something that is procedural in nature, and somebody sues them as a result of that, and they lose that case, the city of Snoqualmie in that context would be liable for those costs, not the city of North Bend. However, the same happens for the King County Sheriff Department, which is the sheriff's department would be liable for that. However, North Bend would not be liable. So it's the liability is equal. What I'm seeing is unequal is the ability to select, choose, recruit, interview, and hire our chief. Is that a correct interpretation of liability? Is there more to it that I should be considering on this particular notion? And I tried to talk slow to give you time to think.
I'm also a slow thinker, but
I might take the first stab and then I'll pass it over to our city administrator. So liability, in terms of a police-related incident, you are correct, council member, and the indemnification provision in each of the contracts will shift that liability to that police services provider and away from the city of North Bend, who is receiving the contracted service. Essentially, that police service provider is the independent contractor making those police-related decisions. So you're looking at indemnification in that way. In each of those contracts, indemnification is different in each of the contracts. So as to whether or not North Bend could have an ability to have a say in a chief and whether or not that sort of buys liability, those two items I don't think are fairly legally combined. A decision and who to hire as a chief is an employment decision, certainly. So the employing agency is going to be making that final decision, but having some influence, for example, is not legally prohibited, does not increase liability for North Bend. But ultimately, training, supervision, and that final hiring and or firing decision usually lives with that employing agency.
to add to that, I believe in the context of an agreement or a contract with the city of Snoqualmie, this council could insist that if you were to extend or have a new contract with that city, to have a greater say, not to have a decision-making role, but perhaps a greater say in who's selected ultimately as a chief or perhaps even other command staff. But that would be obviously subject to negotiation. You wouldn't have the ability to say, we want this person, and they'd have to abide by that. But similar to also, I want to mention the county, you have a selection amongst folks who they would bring forward for your consideration. You wouldn't have the ability to select from a larger group of candidates. You would be provided with 4 or 5 names, I understand, from which you then could interview and then select one of those. I also want to note that you don't have the ability to decide, well, you guess you would in some manner. I'd ask the sheriff to perhaps expound on this, but if it came time for you folks to say you were not satisfied with that chief's performance, what is the steps to go about replacing that person? I don't think that's been discussed in great detail with the sheriff. I think that's a very important piece of any consideration you might have with the county as well.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because that last piece would require some clarification from King County. But going back to, and I appreciate both of your answers, the greater say though, I'll lean in on Councilmember Jocelyn's assessment that while the scorecarding seems to be relatively balanced, staff did their best on that. I have a different scoring mechanism to it, but though it may be relatively balanced, it's the qualitative pieces that are really important. And so when I hear a phrase like greater say, I don't know how to operationalize that. And I don't, without specific quantifiable language, that just tells me, okay, yes, we can express our interests as much as we like, but that ultimately doesn't mean it's going to have an impact. So there are certain specificities around that. And unfortunately, in my opinion, in this relationship, the qualitative piece has not lived up to what I thought a partner agency would want to do with us specifically. I would expect more of a, hey, we respect your services and partnership, and we don't want to lose you as a customer, even if it's a contractual relationship. I've seen none of that kind of behavior unfold before us. Instead, what I've been seeing is a lot of hesitation, barriers, headache, heartache. So when I try to operationalize a qualitative statement such as you will have a greater say, I struggle with that reality. Just as a clarifying point on that. And thank you for both of those answers. I'll pause there for a second. Actually, I do have an extension. So going beyond liability, what are other ways that the city of North Bend, okay, so let's go back to the example of there's a police shooting, for example. City of Snoqualmie sued, they have liability, they assume all those costs. Are there potentials that those pass-through costs that would be incurred because of the penalties or because of increased insurance rates would then be passed on to us?
I believe those costs could be passed on to us, Councilman. As when we think about the Snoqualmie's costs, the overhead costs does include the back office costs as well as risk management and insurance. And so to the extent that those costs are applicable to North Bend, then any increases in those costs then would be passed on to the city.
Okay, thank you for that. Because when I was reading through this, and I'm reading a lot of words about liability, assuming costs for training, leadership, policing, all that other stuff, but ultimately we could end up paying some sort of bill for lack of leadership, lack of training, or some mishap that may happen in the line of duty that could have been addressed via leadership or training purposes. I mean, am I thinking about this correctly?
That'd be accurate. I think it would hold forth for both agencies. There are obviously back office or indirect costs that are calculated into the cost of the service.
Mm-hmm. Which is, yeah, because then we can get into the other weighting scores of tenured training, leadership, retention, things like that, access to other services that might play a factor in some of those incidents. What other areas outside of what's covered in liability could the city of North Bend resident taxpayers be subject to for negligence either on either agency side? Something happens squarely in King County Sheriff's Department, something happens squarely in Snoqualmie Police Department. Are there other avenues that we would be, quote, liable in court or could be sued for that go outside of what's specifically detailed in what is included in the liability measures?
Councilmember, I might offer, we haven't negotiated a final contract yet, so I have some caveats here. And I don't necessarily relish inviting lawsuits against North Bend in the ways in which we may be sued. So I'm going to stick to the 2019 agreement where Snoqualmie's indemnification of North Bend was for, it arose out of or in any way resulting from the negligent acts, errors, or omissions of Snoqualmie, its officers, employees, and agents in performing the renewal agreement. So if it was not part of negligent acts, errors, or omissions of Snoqualmie, its officers, employees, and agents in performing the agreement, that would potentially be a matter of debate as to whether or not the indemnification would apply. Often when the lawsuits come forward, there's some fingers pointing one way or the other as to whether or not it's a covered claim, and there's some tendering going on in the background.
Thank you for that, because I was trying to come at understanding liability from a different angle. So I threw a Rubik's Cube question at you and said, here, solve it after I mix it up. But I appreciate that. You added some additional context and clarity that was helpful. Thank you.
Question and comment. The substation or the outlet location that we currently have that's being used by Snoqualmie Police Department, can you clarify, is that lease actually with the city of North Bend and we're offering it, or is it with the Snoqualmie Police Department? Who holds that lease? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that's the city of Snoqualmie and the Outlet Mall.
Okay.
But to add to that, the city of North Bend pays for that cost, correct?
I'm not certain of that. I'm not sure that we do pay for a portion of that.
Well, actually, I think we do. I'd like to get this clarified, if we don't mind. I think the term was $400 a month with the properties.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crux of my question, because I believe there was an agenda bill where we agreed to pay something and we voted on that. So my question was, do we actually hold the lease, or is that a invoice to Snoqualmie that we're currently? Okay.
Yeah, and I would expect that it would probably be going through Snoqualmie since they are the principals on the contract, but.
Yeah. And then my comment, I think, just to my colleagues. So I don't necessarily disagree with anything that's really been said. I think over the, nearly almost 18 months, I don't know, 15 months that we've been dealing with this. I think for me, one of the glaring results of the due diligence and the concerns about qualitative items proves that I think at some point the only way we answer those questions with comfort, in my opinion, is in the future is at some point we have our own police force. I think to Councilmember Jocelyn's point, now is not the time financially for obvious reasons, other reasons. But I would ask this council to, regardless of where we end up in a couple weeks, that I think when we're going through forecasting and budget planning and sort of our future planning, I think we need to keep this information at hand, the CPSM study, kind of keep that feather in our cap and say, are we preparing future councils, be it 10 years, 15 years from now, to put them in a position to make decisions that are more readily available, that might be answering all these questions and standing up our own police force. So maybe that's earmarking some small portion of our general fund, or something creative that we can discuss with finance. And I think just the way our town is going, looking at the decisions we made on our comprehensive plan with the TIF district and all the work we're doing on economic development with James and his team. And I mean, our future is very bright and very forward thinking. And I think public safety should be paramount in that, and it should be included in what is the future, what does what does North Bend look like in 10 years? And maybe entering in these contracts and reworking current one or starting with a new one is the right answer, and maybe we'll be fine. But I think financially we should put ourselves and the city in a position to have readily available options in the future. And if the decision is, hey, we have a contract and we like it, let's keep it. Well, now we have a little bit of a slush fund to help with increases or changes to the contract that we need in the future. And it puts that council in maybe a very different position than we are currently today. So.
Love your thinking. But as somebody that's been here a long time, I don't think we've been able to set up one council to another council to make that going forward. But what I do support and believe is something, and has always pushed this, is we need to take a look at ways to save money in reserves for things that we know we're going to have to be in the future. Two, we need to take a look at long-term costs and long-term expenses and take a look at how we bring those together. It's not an easy thing to do. Most cities, most counties, most states don't do that. They spend money immediately when they got it. We know that based on some of the ARPA spending, and thank God we've done some good things and only taken one-time funding and used it for those purposes and not used it to add employees or add additional things. But at the same time, it's important for us to also remember public safety is our number one item. And we need to take a look at that and make sure we get at the right cost, but also look internally if we cannot afford it. Thank you.
We started this process as kind of a must save the contract. I think the project for me has evolved to why. It's more of a question of what's right for the citizens of North Bend. Where are we at in our own developmental process? And asking ourselves and being honest about it, are you getting everything you want out of each of these contracts? Has every question been satisfactorily answered so that you can make an informed decision? Is there anything else that you would want to see or feel like you've been shied away from seeing in these contracts? We will be making a decision hopefully on May 6th, but I think between now and then, there's still ample time if there's other questions to my colleague Torgerson there to volley out to people. I'm sure we have that capability. I don't think that this is just because of Workstudy, we're one and done. I think we're in somewhat control here. This is our own destiny, so I think we could seize it and figure out our next steps. So I just encourage everybody here to really think hard. Are you seeing everything that you want? Do you feel satisfied in what was provided to you? Is there anything else in addition to what was provided or put forward in the proposal that we should see? Is it a fair and balanced contract? Is it a fair and balanced relationship? Is it something that when we go to QFC or whatever stores you shop at, people say, well, you did this on May 6th. I don't agree. Do you have those floor bullet points as to why you made that decision and can stand confidently behind it? Because this is a big decision. So I would just encourage everybody to think just a little reflective moment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councilmember Elwood, because that's exactly where I was thinking. We need to really take a look at those draft contracts. Kendra, I appreciated your comment about giving the opportunity to maybe negotiate. That does make me a little nervous that we could end up making a decision and then end up someplace we didn't expect to be with the negotiations. So I think you're spot on that we need to think about and really look at what's in the contract as it's written right now. And are we satisfied with that? Or what would we like to see before May 6th put into that contract? Yes. Council members online, do you have anything else? Okay. Well, with that, we will now recess the meeting for an executive session to review negotiations on the performance of publicly bid contracts when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased costs pursuant to RCW 42.30-110D. The executive session is expected to last 15 minutes. As there is no action anticipated as a result of the executive session, the videotaping of the meeting will stop at this time.